This is Gemara Baba Kama Daf Kuf Yod Zayin, and we pick it up in the bottom of Kuf to Zayin. We're on the third medium-sized line. And the Gemara quotes the Mishnah that taught us that if someone steals a field from his friend, and then Matzikin, extortionist, people come and take it from the Ganaf. So what is the status of this field? So the Mishnah made a difference that if it's a Makas Medina, it's a plague. What's the plague? That these extortionists, these strong-handed people didn't just take it from this person, but took it from many people. Then the Ganav could tell the Baal, the owner of the field, there's nothing I can do about it. Then it's considered a return. However, in Machmas Gazlan, but if it was taken because of the Gazlan, then the Gazlan is obligated to give him another field. So says the Gemara, Hey Chidami, what does it mean, Machmas Gazlan? If the case is where they took his field, but they didn't take all the other fields, meaning clearly it's only this person's. But this is the simple inverse of the Reisha. This is the diak in the Reisha that said Makas Medina Ivachulu. And what's the obvious implication? If it's a Makas Medina, then you don't have to do anything. Im loy loy. So what's the chiddush of this second case in the Mishnah? Answers Gemara lo shricha da'achua achua. The chiddush is where it's really referring who showed another person's fields, they would confiscate it. So in such a scenario, meaning this guy showed someone else's, and since he caused that person's field to be taken, he has to do it. So they show up to Reuven the Ganav, and Reuven the Ganav goes and points them to someone else's field. That's the chiddush, that Reuven the Ganav is now obligated, because he caused that other field to be taken. Lishna Achrina says the Gemara, Hacham Mayaskinan Kigayin Dansu Hakom Va'amri Le'achuya Daite. The Goyim took the field. They made the robber show him where his field was, and he showed not only his field, but also someone else's field. So maybe one dot less of a chiddush. It's not just that he showed someone else's field, but that is the chiddush of the Seifa. Says the Gemara on the first very wide line at the bottom of Kuf Zayin Mebeza, who covered Achuya Achriya. There was a guy who showed these extortionists, these people are trying to come and steal everything, wheat that were in the house of the Reish Galusa, and they took them. Asla Kamed Rav Nachman, he came in front of Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman said, you're obligated to pay. You showed them those piles of wheat, those storehouses, you have to pay it back. Yasser Rav Yosef Achurid Rav Huna Bar Chia, Yasser Rav Huna Rav Chia Kamed Rav Nachman. Amar Le Rav Huna Bar Chia Rav Nachman Dina Oikenasa. What is the reason you're obligating this guy to pay? Is this the din, or is this a kanas? Amar Le Masnisani. It's a Mishnah Tanan Machas Gazlan Chayav Lahaven Lo Yisadeh. If because of the Gazlan who is taken, therefore you have to give another field. And we just said, what is the case? That you showed someone else's field, so this is the din. This is the simple din in our Mishnah. After Rav Nachman left, Amar there Rav Yosef Rav Huna Bar Chia. My nafkala mina. You asked, is it the din? You asked, is it a kenas? So he said back to him, I don't understand. What's the chilik? What the reason is? As we turn over to Kuf Yitayna, but Aleph says the Gemara, Idina Yikanasa. What's the difference whether it was a din or a kanas? Either way, you're obligated to pay. Amar le Idina Gamrina Mine. Ikanasa like Gamrina Mine. If it's a din that you have to pay, then you can learn from this case to other cases. However, if it's a kanasa that Nachman made him because he was someone that did this all the time, then we can't learn to elsewhere. Ask the Gemara in the second line, Kavitzayin Abad Aleph Benat Teima Timikansinan Loi Gamrinan. Where do we know that we make a kenas so that, excuse me, Umanat Teima, no, I said that wrong. Yeah. Umanat Teimra Timikanse Loi Gamrinan. Where do we know that if it was a kenas, you cannot learn from a kenas to other cases? The Tanya learned in a brisa. A brisa in Gitin Barishaina. They originally said, they originally said that if someone makes someone else's item tameh, or someone makes a wine nesech, they're chayiv to pay. Chazru Leimer, that they said, even if you mix truma into someone else's item, you have to pay. Chazru in, like chazru lai. This teaches us that only later on they said such a din, whereas if they had not said the second din, it would not be included in the first din. My taima, it's a kenas, and says the Gemara, we don't learn from kenasais. Ask the Gemara, it's not the reason. Meikara, Savri lehefsim meruba chashashu, lehefsim mua loy chashashu. The reason is that originally they held were only chash refsin meruba, but not a hefsim muat, and therefore, in the case where the truma is being mixed with hefsim muat, therefore we did not think it was included. So it's not that necessarily you can't learn out from a kenas, but in as much as we didn't think such a case was included. Ask the Gemara, Eini, is this true? Three lines are the medium-sized lines. So he had the order different. That originally it was Mitame and Midam, and only later was, if you made a Yayin Esech, clearly implied Chazur in the Chazur Lai. My time, what's the reason? Lamisham to like Amrinan Mikanasa. So from here we would say that the reason is that you don't learn from a kenas on the first wide line. Says Loi Mekar Savi Kirav Avin also Savi Kirav Yirmiyah. Mekar Savi Kirav Avin. Now what? Te'amar Rav Avin Zarakheitz Mitzchila Zarba. Someone throws an arrow from the beginning of 4 Amois. Anyone doing Amid Yaimi, Gemara that we're in the middle of learning, the Gemaras of Haitzah, you throw something beginning of 4 to the end of 4 and it rips silks in its flight. Potter. Why? Why are you potter? Because the akira was made in a mannerism that's going to end up being hanacha. And therefore, it's an Isidaraisa. You're Chayim Misa. Since you're Chayim Misa, we have the classical rule that Kim Leibadiramine, we're going to pater you from payment. So we thought the same thing by us. But in the end, and therefore, from the moment that you picked up the item, so therefore, the two would not happen at the same time, and therefore the tashlumim would come first, and that's the reason why you have to pay, and only later came the chiyuv misa. Says the Gemara, Rav Huna. We're on the 5th wide line. The Gemara now is really almost commenting on the din of the Mishnah, these din of these masikin, these din of those, which is going to lead us into Maisrim, people who tell on each other, unfortunately, etc. So Rafuna bar Yehuda klai lebei Aviyuni asa lekamei derav amrei klam ma'isa bali yadcha came in front of Rava, and he asked, "Are there any stories that came in front of you?" Amar lei, he said, "Yisrael shansua akum." That what if a yid was forced by goyim v'hera ma'amoin chaveiroi to show him the money of his friend? Bali yadai v'chayavtif. That case came in front of it, and I obligated such a person to pay. Amar lei, ahada of delamare. He said he should be chayzer. It should be chayzer, and the money should go back to where the original owner is. The Tanya we learned in a brisa. So he said, you ruled incorrectly in such a scenario, the money should go back. Amar Rabba, says Rabba, Im Herome Atzmai. If he showed them the money on his own, he wasn't forced, he offered information. That says, if he gave with his own hands, and in such a story, he would be chayiv. Continues the Gemara, Hu Gavra. There was a man, we're about 10 lines into the medium-sized lines. The first word on the line is Amar Rabba. How Gavra dan Suakom, that the Goyim forced him, Vachvua Chamra Derav Mari Breid Rav Hilchos Breid Rav Chista. And he showed the wine of his fellow Yid, Amar Lei. Amar Lei. They said to him, Dari Vamti Badan, pick up the wine and bring it with us to the king's palace. Dari Vamti Badai, we picked it up and he carried with them. They came from Ravashi. Ravashi said, you're potter from paying the wine. Why? Because you were forced. Amalei Rabbanan the Ravashi. Aye, what about our brisa we just said? So why are you telling me you're potter? It's only if you didn't offer the information in the beginning. But if you originally offered the information in the beginning, then it's considered that the money is akluye, the money is burnt up, therefore you are, yes, indeed obligated. What if the honest, this guy who's forcing him to give stuff, said, give me this bundle of straw, or give me this cluster of grapes, and you actually gave it to him? Chayiv, you're chayiv. You're two sides of the river. He said to pass it to me, he didn't just say give it to me. Says the Gemara, that is the proof that it was a trei avri dinara and this guy would not have been able to get it without you. That's the reason why there is an obligation in such a case. And we're at the two dots, smack in the middle of these medium-sized lines. First one line is Nam Yahuda. Shuta Davimansi Ale Beitre. There was a trap, a fish trap, that two people were fighting over. They're each claiming it's theirs, and one went and he gave it to the officer of the king. Amar Abayo. Says Abayo, he's not chayiv. Why not? Because Yachol Leimar, he's able to say, Anam. Ki masi didi masi. When I gave it over, I gave over for what is mine. Amalei Rava, says Rava, v'chol kemine. Does he have such an ability? Elam Rava shamtinu le'ademaisi. We put him into cherim till he brings it v'kai bedina, till he comes to Bezdin to figure out whose trap was it really. There's no way you could give it away and say it was yours, because that itself was a debated point. It says another story. Gavar Davi Bayi Achvuya. There was a guy who wanted to show his friend Oisvei the Chavre, the straw of his friend, to the tax collectors, the king's officers. Rav said, don't show it to him. Don't show it to him. What are you doing? He said to Rav, no, I'm not listening. I'm going to show the straw. Rav Kana was sitting there. Rav Kana said, he said, he dislocated his neck from his place. He broke his neck. Kari Rav Aliyeh, and Rava said about this guy who disregarded the words of Bezdin, Banayach Olfei Shachvu, Beroish Kol Chutzais, Kitai, Mechmar. Your children have fainted, they've fallen on the street like a wild ox trapped in a net, that the Yidden are compared to be unto the net of the Goyim. Says the Gemara, just like this wild ox, once it falls into a net, there's no one to have pity on him. There's nothing to do about it. He'll even come to kill someone for it, because informing on someone causes one to kill, and therefore you have to be so careful. Until now, those in power were the Parsain. But now we have the Greeks, the Kapti, Ashvichos Damim. And they say, Muradin. They'll say you're a murderer. Kom Sak L'Aretz Yisrael. You better get up and go to Eretz Yisrael. Says the Gemara of Akibal Alayich, Lo Takshi Rav Yechlan Sheva Shnin. And except when yourself, you're not going to have any kashas on Rav Yechlan for 7 years, because you're going to a new Rebbe in Eretz Yisrael. First have to learn. Azal, he went. Ashkeche, and he found the Rish Lakish. Just become same as if the Diyam of the Rabbanon. And he went to the yeshiva of Yechlan. He found Rish Lakish, and he was sitting there and he was chazering over the daily shir with the Rabbanan Amar Lahu. So Rav Kahana said to them, Rish Lakish, Heicha, where's Rish Lakish? Amar Le Amai, Amar Lo, Hai Kusha, Hai Kusha. He pointed out different kashas on the shir. Amar Le said to him, Amai, excuse me, Hai Kusha, Hai Kusha, Hai Baruka, Hai Baruka. And these are the truths of Amar Le Rish Lakish. So he told Rish Lakish what Rav Kahana, again, Rav Kahana basically running away from the government now in Eretz Yisrael, in the yeshiva of Rav Yechanan, asking kashas. So they said over to Rish Lakish, also Rish Lakish, Amar Rav Yechanan. So Rish Lakish, who was basically just a chayzer, he was saying over the share of Rav Yechanan, he went and told Rav Yechanan, Ari Allah mi Bavel, a lion has come up from Bavel, lion Marviv and Siftam, Tilamachar. A lion has come from Bavel. Be careful tomorrow what you say, so that Rav Kana doesn't have any kashas. Lamachar, next day in Yishir, what did Rav Yechanan do? They put Rav Kana in the first row in front of Rav Yechanan. Amar, Shemait Zavalo Yikshi, Shemait Zavalo Yikshi. Rav Yechanan said a drasha, and Rav Kana didn't ask anything. He said it again and didn't ask. Anachte acharei sheva dari. So he said, Rav Kahana, we thought you're a chashav guy. They moved him back 7 rows into the crowd. And they kept moving him back as Rav Kahana seemingly didn't have any kashas till Rav Kahana was sitting in the final row of the yeshiva. Amar Rav Yochanan Reish Lakish. Rav Yochanan said to Reish Lakish, Arisha Amarta, the lion that you told me about, Naseb, Shul has become a fox. He's nervous. He's not asking any kashas. Amar Yeirava. Rav Kana said, Yeirava dahani sheva dari lavi chilo sheva shnin. Rav Kana said, the 7 rows that they moved me back in yeshiva should be in the place of the 7 years that I was told to be quiet. Damarli Rav kama karei. Damarli Rav, which Rav said to me I shouldn't ask kashas. So finally, Rav Kana kama karei gets up. Damarli nahadar mar bereisha. He says to Rav Yechanan, let's start from the beginning. Rav Yechanan said, Shemaitza, Vakshi, and he had a kasha. Ukme v'darei kamos. They put Rav Kana back in the first row of the yeshiva. Shemaitza Vakshi. Rav Yechanan v'yasvi, Hasheva bis Tarki. Rav Yechanan was sitting on 7 rugs. Shalfi lei chada bistarka mitusei. They removed one rug from under Rav Yechanan. Mitusei Amar Shemaitzav Akshilach. Rav Yechanan said another kasha, or another day, and Rav Kana had a kasha. Ad the shavalei kuli b'tarka musein. Each time Rav Yechanan removed another rug from underneath him. Tell Rav Yechanan he's not sitting on anything. Ad the Yosef alara. Tell Rav Yechanan is sitting on the ground. Rav Yechanan ad Yosef alara. Rav Yechanan gaver Saba Hava. Rav Yechanan was elderly. Umisrachi gevine, and his eyebrows were long, and they hung over his eyes. So you couldn't actually see Rav Kana in front of him. Amar le, he said to his Talmidim, Delu einai, raise up my eyes. V'achse, I want to see who is this person asking kashas. Delu li b'mechalte de kaspa. They lifted his eyebrows for him with a silver utensil. Chaza de parte sifsoise. Saw that Rav Kahana's lips were split. Savar achuyach kamayich. He thought Rav Kahana was laughing. He thought Rav Kahana was smiling, and he was smirking, and it was good kashas bay. Cholash daite. Rav Yechanan felt bad. V'noch navshei, and Rav Yechanan unfortunately was, Cholash daite. Rav Yechanan felt bad, and v'noch navshei. Rav Kahana was nifter for causing the great Rav Yechanan pain. Lamach, or the next day, Amrlei, Rav Yechanan Rabbanan, Chazitu liblabloi, heichei avid. Did you see what the babloi did? How he was mocking me? Amrulei, darkei hochi. This is what he does. He wasn't mocking you. Rav Kana had a smile on his lips. That's just the way he was. He wasn't mocking you. All gabe marta. So Rav Yochanan went to the cave that Rav Kahana was buried. Chazad Ave, he saw at the entrance to the cave, Hadr Le'achna. There was a snake that was encircling the opening of this cave in which Rav Kahana was buried, not allowing anyone entry. Amar Le Rav Yochanan said to the snake, Achna, Achna, Pasach Pumach. He told the snake, open your mouth. Rav Yochanan wanted to go in to the Arain of Rav Kahana. Achna, achna, pasach bumech v'yachnitz harav eitzel Talmud. And let the Rebbe go to the Talmud v'loi pasach and open his mouth. Yachnitz chaver eitzel chaver. So if Yochanan says to the snake, okay, you said a Rebbe to a Talmud. Let one friend, a chaver to a chaver, putting himself on the same level as Rav Kahana v'loi pasach. Says Rav Yochanan, Yachnis Talmud Eitzel Rav. Let the Talmud go to the Rav, and then Pasach Lei, the snake, opened his mouth, allowing Rav Yochanan to enter the cave. Boyi Rachamei, Rav Yochanan davens on the dead body of Rav Kahana. And guess what? V'oikmei, Rav Kahana is Techias HaMesim. Omar Lei, says Rav Kahana, Yav Yadana Dedarchei Demar Achi Lochal Shadaiti. If I would have known that this is the way they usually look and you weren't actually laughing at me, I wouldn't have felt bad. Hashta Leisi Mar Bahadon. So he says to Rav Kahana, now come back to yeshiva. Omar Lei, Rav Kahana says, Imatzis Limi Bai Rachamei. The Sulo Shchivta Azilna. If you daven again and I'm not going to die, I'll come back to yeshiva. V'ilai lo yazilna, I'm not going. But since the time had passed, I'm not going to be risking my life again. Cholaf. Tyrei okmer Rav woke him and raised him up. Shale kol sveika davilei upashtina nehaleh. He asked them all sveikas, and he answered all of them. Hainu dam Rav Yochanan delchoin amri delhoin he. And this is how what Rav Yochanan said. I saw that the Torah is yours since you never went to Galus. But now I realize that it's actually theirs. They in Galus, Rav Kahana from Bavel, had even Torah at a greater level than even the great Rav Yochanan. Continues the Gemara. After that fascinating story, the two dots, about 12 lines down, Kof Yud Zayin Amud Beis. Ahod Achai I Atachsa de Rav Abba. The person who showed Rav Abba's different silks to the officers of the king, and they took it, of course. Yes, for showing it to the king, you should be obligated. You caused someone loss, therefore you have to pay back. Only if you give it with your hand, and in this case you did not give it with your hand, and therefore there is no chiyuv. Amar Lei says, they said to Rav Abba, Amru Lei Zilagabe, to Rav Shimon ben Ilyakam, Rav Lazar ben Pedas, the Daine Dina de Garmi, because they dan Dina de Garmi. They cause one to be obligated for even merely causing a loss. They went in front of him, Chayve Mastisa, and they told him that he is chayiv based on our Mishnah. That if the field was taken because of the ganef, then he has to pay back. But again, only in the case of which we said is akin to actually giving you with his own hands. Continues the Gemara, two dots, about 10 lines. About 10 lines from the wide lines, another story. There was a guy who they gave a silver cup as a pikadon, sliki ganvei aluye. Ganavim came to him, threatening to take the pikadon. Shakle, he took the cup, and he gave it. Yavilu gave it to him. Rabba Patre. Rabba said he's parted from paying. This is a case that he saved himself with the mammon of his friend. They came against him, and he gave them his friend's money, gave them the pikadon, so he should be obligated to ask Abaye to Rabba. Elo Amar Rav Ashi, says the Gemara, explains Rav Ashi Chazinan. We see Ianish Amidu Adaita Dideyasi. If he's a wealthy guy, then they came because of his own account, and it's true. Then he would have to pay. If he's not a wealthy guy, then Adaita the Kaspe also, why did they come? They came because he knew he had the silver cup, and therefore he would not be obligated to the fact that he gave it to them. Continues the Gemara with another story, 4 lines from the white lines. Who covered them? Arnika, they gave a wallet as a pikadain of, Arnika de Pidyain Shvuyim, to redeem slaves. Halika Ganve Aluye. So what happened is Ganavim came, Shaklei Yavin Yalayu, and they were going to hurt him. So he gave them the Arnika. Asla Kamei de Rava Patre. Rava said, "You're Pater." Why are you Pater? You saved yourself again with your friend's money. Amar Le, and the first white line, in the Chapidyan Shvuyin Gadol Mizu, and therefore that's what the money was used for, and therefore there's no need to repay that which they took. Says the Gemara, one last story on the first white line. Aho Gavra Da'aktim Asik Chamra Limevra Kamei Dislika Insha Bimabra. There was a person who ran and he brought his donkey to the boat before the people boarded the boat. Kamei Disilka Bailat Inish Limevra Bailam Latbuye. What happened is the donkey entered the boat. After then the people filled up, but the boat was about to capsize. Asahu Gavra. So a guy came and realized that it was very dangerous. And what did he do? And he took the donkey, pushed it into the river, and the donkey drowned. But by the donkey drowning, the boat stabilized, and now it saved everyone. And they said, and Rabbah said, Patri, he's Pater from paying for the donkey. It's very nice that you saved yourself, but you did it with your friend's money, so you have to pay. No, the owner was a Roidev. You should never have put the donkey on the boat in the first time. Says the Gemara, Rabba Latamei Dama Rabba Roidev Shea Roidev Achaver Lahargoy. So when chasing his friend to kill him, Vishiber as like Kalim Bein Shal Nir Bein Shal Kalim Potter. Sure is Chayv and Asher is Chayv Misa when he comes to kill someone. Venir Dav Shishiber as like Kalim Shal Roidev Potter. Why should Manu Chavala Migufai? Because just like you could kill him to save yourself, you don't have to worry about his money. Aval Shal Kol Adam Chayiv. But if the one being chased breaks someone else's items, then he's chayiv. Because you can't save yourself with someone else's money. Potter. Says the Gemara that if there's one chasing another and they broke Kalim, then you're a Potter. Why? Because really minadin you should be chayiv. However, in such a scenario, no one will save anyone else, and therefore we have to say that they are Potter. We're almost out of time. Let's just begin the next Mishnah. Shitfai nar amrlai reish al. Says the Mishnah, what happens if a river comes over and inundates a field that was stolen? The robber says to the Baal Bayis, I'm sorry, what do you want me to do? Take what is yours. There's nothing I can do for this field. Tana Rabbanan, says the Gemara. You have to give him another field. So what is this machlekes of Eliezer and the Chachamim? Eliezer darshi buyu miyute. V'kichesh v'amisai is a riboy. Pipikadain is a miut. Kol sheishav lav l'sheker chazav a riboy. Says Eliezer riboy umiyah v'riboy. Riboy akol, you include everything. My riboy call mili. Uma miut shtarois. And that's the reason why Rav Eliezer is going to hold chayiv lav lo yisad chaveiroi. Rabbanan darshi kol prati v'kichesh klal v'kodem prat oy mikol chazer v'klal klal prat uklal yatadana l'kina prat. Says the Chachamim ha'prat dever hamataltel, only a movable item a gufa imamayin. I've called over hamataltel v'gufa imamayin yatsa karkosh hamataltel yatsa avodim shekshu like karkosh and stars of hamataltelin ein gufa imamayin. And therefore in those cases you'll be Potter. Say the Chachamim k'nos every shachol afanecha. Pick it up from here b'siyata dishmaya.